welcome to Tech Hit channel. And today we will be dealing with functions, the components of a function, what are the different types of functions, and how we call a function. So first of all, let's understand what is a function. So function and the need of function is just, let's take an example, okay? So you have textbooks, right? So for different subjects you have different textbooks, okay? So in order to cover and complete one particular subject, you have different chapters in that particular subject, right? So these chapters act as modules, and what these modules do is, if you take this subject as the entire subject and you just start understanding it, it might be a difficult task for you, right? So therefore this entire subject is divided in, like this entire complex subject you can say, is divided into different chapters, that is into different modules, into subtasks, right? So one by one, when you complete those tasks, you start understanding the subject, right? So you understand the importance of the subject, why is that subject being taught and everything, right? So these modules help you understand the subject, and that same way is the function for a program. So this function provides modularity, the reusability of the code, and the readability of the code. Now let's understand these terms one by one. First of all, modularity you already understood, that is dividing a complex task into small modules and completing those modules in order to complete this particular complex task, right? Now let's understand the reusability of the code. Now suppose you have to do one particular work again and again, that is multiple number of times. Suppose in a particular program you have to find the factorial of a number multiple number of times, right? So are you going to do that thing again and again? That will like make your program longer, right? And you want your program to be short and understandable, right? For anyone to understand once they read it. So for that purpose, you make a function named factorial, and there you do the factorial task, right? Now, whenever in the function, whenever the program needs a factorial, you will just pass those numbers to that factorial function and your work will be completed, right? So this is how the reusability of the code is implemented. We will be understanding all these things in detail as we go further in the chapter. But right now, this is what I wanted to tell you. And then comes the readability of the code. Now suppose you give your program to a person who is new to coding, and the program should be such that it could be at least be understood on the outlines by anyone, right? So for that purpose, readability comes, okay? So when you make different functions for a task, that brings a better understanding to the new programmer, right? Whenever a new person comes to understand your program, that person won't be having any issues with the program, because you have named your function such that that person can understand, okay, if I have to print a particular name, I'll be calling this function. If I have to print this sum, I have to call this function. So he knows what a particular function is doing, and accordingly he can use those functions in the program, okay? Now with this, we have understood what is function. Your function has different components. First of all, it has two components, that is your function header and the function body. Now what does your function header means? It is the function prototype that tells what the entire function is doing, okay? As in, your function header has three parts, I can say, that you can see on the screen, that is return type, function name, and the parameter list, if any, right? Parameter list, the function can have a parameter or can not have parameters, okay? So that is optional, but there would be a return type, there would be a function name for sure, and then comes the function body. Now let's first of all, let's understand this with particular example. So I have taken this question, write a function to print I am an Indian, okay? So if we write it without using functions, just using the main function, then we can write it like this, right? But suppose there is a person who is like a newbie, right? He needs to understand what is this particular line 25th doing, right? So for that purpose, we will be making one we will be making one function named print, okay? Just a second, print function, we can write that way, and then we can pass a string to this, okay? Let's not pass a string, just let's do this, and we will be writing this particular line from here to here, right? And now if we compile this program, it won't run. For this function to be like executing its task, we need to call that function. Okay, so let's call this function, that is print func. We have called this function here, and now what, like how will the execution happen? See, as you all know that your execution starts from the main, right? So your the control of the execution will first of all come to this main function. Then it will see that a print func named function is being called. So it will go to line number 22 to find that okay, this is the function and this is being called. Now what it will do, it will get inside it. See, it has void data type, return type. Void return type, like void return type basically returns nothing. Okay, understand that. I'll be like explaining it when we will be discussing about the different types of functions. But first of all, let's understand that void is a return type. Print func is the function name, and this is the code for the function body, right? Now when I call this, what will happen? It will return me I am an Indian, right? It did it, right? So the task is completed. Now what is this type of function? Let's now discuss about function. You understood what is function? We divided this into a subtask. Okay, for anyone to understand, okay, this is the print function and this line means we are printing it on the console, right? So now let's understand this thing, that is the types of functions. Now there is 4 types of functions, as I told you earlier: parameterized function, non-parameterized function, and your return type function and your void function. Okay, so now let's understand what is void function, return type function, parameterized and non-parameterized. So your void function, if the return type of a function is void, then that means it won't be returning any value. Okay, so right now as you can see here, the function print like this print func is the function name and its return type is void. So it is not returning anything as the main is doing. Now you can see this main function has a return type int, right? So it is returning 0, right? So since it has void return type, it won't be returning anything. Okay, now what if it had, suppose just take one more example, that is take 2 numbers and print the max of the 2 numbers. So we have taken an input, that is n1 and n2, right? Now we will make one function which will have a return type, because I want that function should return the maximum of the 2 numbers. Now you can see I have written this entire program. So what it does is, first of all, the control comes in the main. Then what it does, it sees okay, there are 2 numbers that have been declared. Then in the next line we are taking the input for those 2 numbers. Okay, now what in the next line what we will be doing is, we will be calling this function that we have made, and what we will be doing is, we will be passing 2 numbers, that is n1 and n2, that we have taken, right? Now one more thing I'll make you understand. Whenever you have a return type here of the similar return type, like जो भी function का return type है, same data type में we have to take one variable where we will be storing the number that is being returned by this maximum function. Okay, so what we are doing is int result equals to maximum func n1 and n2, right? And then what we are going to do is cout result. Okay, so what we did is, the data type of the function maximum func is int. Okay, so its return type is int. Then your function name is maximum func. Then you have 2 parameters. Now understand, earlier what we discussed here in this print func, there was no parameter. Now in this particular function there are parameters. Okay, now what we are doing is, if n1 is greater than n2, we are returning n1, else return n2. Okay, now suppose, okay, this is done. Now once this particular task is completed, the control will come to this line, and whatever the result is, that would be stored in this result named variable. Okay, and then we are printing it. Now suppose, let's take for example n1, okay, let's take example as n1 is 8 and n2 is suppose 3. Okay, so what will happen is, first of all we took the input, then here we are calling the function, right? So n1 has 8 and n2 has 3, right? So now the function will be like maximum func 8 comma 3, and this will call this function which is here, right? Now you can see n1 and n2. These will be assigned with 8 and 3. Okay. Now we will be checking if 8 is greater than n2, 3. Is it? Yes. If it is, then we are returning n1. So since 8 is greater than 3, what we are returning is 8, right? So now we returned 8. Now when we are returning a value, that value needs to be stored in some variable in order to print it, right? Now understand this way, whenever you initialize or whenever you have to use some values, you put it into a variable in order to reuse it whenever needed, right? So for the same purpose, here we are storing this particular maximum func n1 n2 into a result named variable, and whenever we need it further in the program, we can use it. Okay, so you have understood here. What we understood is return type function. It is a return type plus parameterized function. Okay, now so with this you have understood about parameterized, non-parameterized functions, the void type functions, and the return type functions. Return type functions are the functions which have a particular return type. That is, there is some data type which is defined. Okay, that is here int is defined, and void type function is what? In which the data type is void. That means it will be returning nothing. Okay, understood? So now suppose we can understand like this also. Suppose I didn't wanted to return any value, I just wanted it to print it, right? So I would have done it like void maximum func, and then instead of this return statement, I would have written n1, and here I would have written cout n2. Okay, and then what I would have done is just this much, and it's done, right? Now let's see how will it work. So I'll input 8 and 3, and see, you can see here 8 is coming, right? You might not be able to see. For that purpose, I'll do one thing. Just a second, I'll put endl so that it changes the line. So I'm giving the input as 8 and 3, and the output is coming as 8, right? So here what we did, we are not storing it anywhere. We are just calling it, and there only the task is being executed of printing the maximum numbers, right? So in that case, this is what type of function? This is a parameterized plus a void type function. Understood? Okay, now let's come to something that is much more interesting than this, that is calling a function. Okay, now calling a function can be done in two ways, that is passing by value or passing by reference. Okay, now reference means address. Now you can see that I have given these okay, let me just convert it to what I did earlier, that is returning. Okay, now you can see the same program, the program I have changed, the earlier program in which the return type was there and parameterized function is there. So that is the program. Now here you can see I am passing these two numbers which I took as the input to the function, right? And I'm passing that by value. Whenever I pass it by value, it will, what the function will do, suppose I have passed 8 and 3, right? So it will make a copy of this 8 and 3, and that would be passed to the function. Okay, so I've taken this another question, that is sum function, and I want that the sum of two numbers is being given to me. Okay, now understand one thing, pass by value passes the copy of the value, right? So whatever value is there, like 8 and 3 we took, right, in n1 and n2, so the copy of n1 and n2 will go to this function sum func. Okay, so whatever changes we do here to n1 and n2 won't be reflected here in the main function. Okay, so now let's see how. So I have written it. Now I will be running the program. I give the input as 8 and 3. The sum is coming to be 11, right? Okay, now what I told is, in pass by value, you pass the copy of that particular values, right? So there won't be any change here in the main function if in case you make any change in the sum func. Okay, so now what I'm trying to say is, suppose I print, suppose I do n1 plus equals to 5. Okay, Is that or let's take 2. Okay, now what I have done is I have said that whatever n1 that I got, do plus 2 to it. Okay, so that means I sent 8 to the function, and now I asked print like n1 plus equals to 2. That means do n1 plus 2, right? So now it will be n1 will be equals to 10, right? So the sum that would be printed here would be 10 plus 3, right? That is 13. Fine, that would be printed here. But now observe one thing. What I'm trying to say is that I have written this n1 in sum func, and here also I have printed n1, right? Now when you will see the values, you will see, though here in this there would be 10, but when I'm printing this n1, there would be 8 in n1. Now that is what I said, that we passed 8 and 3 as the copy of 8 and 3, not the actual 8 and 3. So whatever changes are done in sum func won't be reflected in the main function. Okay, okay, let's see what it is printing. So let's give the input as 8 and 3, and what we got is, in the num, like in the sum func, I printed n1 in sum func is equals to what? So it gave me 10, right? I said whatever is the value, like changes we have done, that would be given there in sum func only. Okay, then I said return sum, and then the result is being printed, right? So the result would be based on whatever changes have been done, because that is being executed. Okay, so we got the result as 13. Now when I printed n1 in the main function, what value we are getting? See, we got the original value that we passed to the function, right? There wasn't any change here. So that is the concept of passing by value. Now let's talk about passing by reference. So the meaning of reference is sending by address. That is, wherever that particular value is stored, that address would be sent to the sum func. Okay, and there the changes would be done. So remember one thing, in that case, when we are sending n1 and n2, we are sending the original n1 and n2. Why? Because we are sending the reference of it to the function. Okay, so let's see how it works. So let's, now whenever we pass by reference, remember one thing, we use this ampersand symbol. Okay, this means we are passing the address of n1 and the address of n2. So whatever changes we do here would directly be reflected in main and everywhere else. Okay, so now when we run this program, as earlier what we were getting, here we are getting 10 and here we are getting 8, right? But now you will be seeing that there also you will get 10, and here also in the main function as well you are getting 10. So let's execute and see. So 8 and 3, right? Now you can see in n1 in sum func is equals to 10, and n1 in the main function also is equals to 10. Now why did it happen? Because we passed it by reference. That means we passed the address of n1 and n2 to the sum func. Okay, so that was passed by reference. Now I like to tell you one more thing that is very important, that is array. Like discussion about the function call with respect to array. Now remember one thing, whenever we pass any array into a function, it is always done with respect to pass by reference. Okay, it is not passed by value. So even if you don't put this and ampersand symbol, you will see that whatever changes you do in this function, okay, that would be reflected in the actual array. Now for that, let's take an example. So this is the program that I have written for understanding the array concept, like the pass by reference concept for array. Now what I told is, when you pass an array, it is already passed with reference. Okay, so whatever changes you do in this particular function, okay, so that change would be reflected here as well. Is that clear? So we don't need to use this ampersand symbol. Okay, here understand one thing, that array is always passed to a function by reference only. Okay, whereas for others like vectors, map, and other like normal values, also variables, in that case you will have to use ampersand, but for array it is always passed by reference. Let's take the let's run and see. Let's input n is equals to 3 and the numbers be 1, 5 and 7. Now what will happen is, these numbers what I have input is okay. Now change function will be called, and it says ARR at 0 is plus 100. Okay, so what it will do is whatever value is there at ARR 0, that would be incremented by 100. Okay, now you will observe one thing, that since the array is passed by value, the proof I'll be give like this code is particularly the proof for that thing. Now you will see that in this line there would be 101, and here also in the main function as well you will see the answer is 101. Okay, let's see. Okay, now you saw in change function it's 101, and in the main function as well you have 101, right? Let's meet in the next class. Till then, happy coding.